Hi, I'm Ganya.
I'm Angelica.
Today we're speaking to BJ and Kiki, co-founders of Seeds of Wild, a chef-led food company delivering sustainable catering and immersive dining experiences.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us.
So what is Seeds of Wild?
Seeds of Wild is sort of like my creative baby to start off with. It was a space to tell stories about food and to really connect with people in and around like alternative food systems, so locally produced and community-led food systems. And now it is a beautiful, blossoming entity. So we are a catering company, we're an immersive food studio, we help brands to communicate different things through food, and we help brands to connect to each other through food.
What does immersive studio actually mean?
Because
Because that's a really interesting word.
I think it's that it can mean so many things. I'm not trying to be like overly ambiguous, but it is basically a sensory way of introducing food and concepts around wellness, around connectivity. So it's quite a creative way to have sort of just say like an event, like an event and use your food at an event. And we use sort of like exploration, we use food as almost like an installation to tell a story. So you're eating a meal, you're eating food, but it's so much more than that. You're connecting on like where it came from in, you know, like a portrait or something, or we have a speaker talk about things in and around. So it's just a sort of like different dining experience.
Do you have an example of one of your favorites where the guests really connected with the food and how you came up with the food idea and what message you were trying to convey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your favorite one is, but I think one of my favorites was definitely, I think, Doctor Martens, where we did like a really cool event for their leadership team who hadn't met each other. They were global, they were sort of like across continents, you know, you're emailing and such, and you kind of know each other, but you don't really know each other. And so we created something with the sort of like brand ideas in mind, this idea of like heritage, British heritage, and also using like the idea of what the product was made out of, the materials. So we based the menu on those kind of things. And then we based the sort of setup on the idea of connectivity, exploration, fun, sort of gamified it, like getting to know each other and bonding. So it wasn't just, oh, here's some cocktails, that's like Lisa from accounting in LA and that's whatever. It's like, oh, you have to tell me something really important, you know, to you or to your team. Yeah, like the way they explored the food, they kind of like had to work in a team to create their dish, and they had to, it was all about foraging and finding local produce, but like on your actual table. So we had things that were like grown that we just sort of like plucked out of the ground, and they had to sort of like cut them and make their salads. And
I would say another event that was quite good was Lush. So we did a Safer Social Summit for them in the last year, and a flow of different people coming throughout the day. So it was more media and press in the afternoon, and then in the evening they had activists, and they partnered with other organisations that are fighting misinformation. So something close to our heart. Previously I was CEO of a media charity and I've done lots of stuff in media. So it was quite cool to bump into some friends I knew in the media and for them to see this kind of like new version of me working in food, introduce them to Kiki. And in the afternoon we'd kind of come up with like really fun snacks and desserts that were mood boosting, but then in the evening the canapes we made were all themed off things to do with tech. So she made like Pac-Man gingerbread men, so people walking around, and the installation was very playful. And then rather than just having like Prosecco's and champagnes, we also had like mocktails that had health benefits. So we were kind of encouraging people coming to the end of the night, you know, have your kiwi, have your blue spirulina, have things that will reduce the hangover. So it was quite cool to kind of like blend into an experience and come up with alterations that would make people have a conversation.
First question is, how did you identify this as a gap, and why did you sort of think I really want to put my time and energy into this? And then from that, how did your partnership come about? Because I think the audiences are always wanting to know, like, how can I do this for myself? How can I find someone who has a similar vision to me, has a similar mission, and wants to make something beautiful and bring that to the world?
I think I was like a chef for a very long time, and I was doing events and things like that, and I saw a lot of waste, and I saw a lot of disconnection with things like not being in season, and I was just thinking, oh wow, we could have done this in such a different way, and it would have been more sustainable, which meant, you know, like our footprint was a lot less, which is another add to, you know, whatever the event is. It like elevates it even more because you're thinking about that, and that was really, really important to me. And I also realized that we have lots of different cultures. We enjoy lots of different foods from all over that have been imported at, you know, whatever time, but we don't really know the history. I think it really started from a conversation about like quinoa or chia seeds or something as like a health food. And a friend was like, oh, you know, these are really healthy. Have you heard of them? And I'm like, yeah, this is a really old kind of Peruvian thing. You know, it's really rooted in their culture. And I just noticed that there was a lot of food trends, health and wellness, that were really disconnected from where they came from. And I wanted to do things that were around storytelling, so around hospitality, which I think was really important. Bringing people together over food seemed very obvious in general. But then it was the storytelling element, the like getting more people, and I think you will know that you did this quite a lot as well. And then, yeah, when we met, we realised we do a lot of the same things.
Yeah, and with me, I was definitely not a chef, but I'm very much like a connector, communicator. In the period of time that Kiki was building, I had just done a food festival in the start of the pandemic, 2020, and we had 60 restaurants who didn't want to be on Deliveroo, who wanted to still have a digital footprint, work with us. We did a food bank. We fed 35,000 families, and that really got me back in my food bag. And I was trying to find a way to not just wait for this big moment to make money, but like something that's more consistent. I was offered a bunch of restaurants, cafes, and different opportunities, and I really found home in like working in supper clubs, like building experiences where we'll hire a restaurant, we'll co-create a menu with the team there, and I'll just gather people and have conversations about the future and conversations about things needed now. Through doing that, I found myself sponsoring and supporting retreats. So that was the first time we collaborated. So I brought a hair and beauty brand in to do goodie bags, and she was designing the experience for a group of us on this retreat in Eastbourne, Brighton. And then within the conversation, I went and supported her supper club, became my friend, and was blown away with the flavours. And I was like, we should do something. And we ended up creating a networking experience for London Tech Week in 2024. We came up with like really fun cookies that had lion's mane in it, and co-branded it. We created connection cards for people to meet new people, and then 2 weeks later, you know, we were only like 6-7 weeks of knowing each other. I was like, let's go and do this in south of France. So we went to Cannes Lion, and I had some activations lined up and just integrated our team. So rather than having to go to a company, shut it down, their restaurant, whatever, we can actually bring food, immersive design together and community together. And over a course of 4 days, we created a lunch with the global creative director of Doctor Martens. We did a yacht experience. We did a day brunch at a hotel with WPP. And then, yeah, from there, we just shook hands and we're like, look, we're going to build and we're going to do stuff. And we've done so many different things, but I think those are 3 key moments that kind of really expanded on what she was doing. And then we've locked in on catering, but we've come back full circle with how we started, which is with this immersive design is how we kind of built the bond initially anyways.
So how long have you been working together? How many years?
2 years now.
2 years. Yeah. And where do you see the business going? If you think
well,
about
the business
how
has done 4 years, and now it's 2 years together. And I think where we're going to be going with the business is definitely going to change depending on the economy. Because if it was up to me, it would be like, oh, we're doing everything international, after Cannes, you do Miami, you do Amsterdam. But actually, there is beauty in actually having roots. And that's something I've loved about connecting with Kiki and being part of this business. So it's like there's 2 tracks of work happening at the same time. One of us or a group of us are working on future, and then the other side is like working on the now. So really locking in London, like becoming one of the leading #1 catering companies for conferences, weddings, studio activations. And then from a national and international perspective, being part of the conversation around food sovereignty, around food poverty, and then also tapping into the experiential events and trying to make it more sustainable. There's so many events happening, and in the age of AI, human experiences are only going to thrive and
Be
grow
more
Yeah.
more and
important.
more.
That,
you know?
that's interesting.
And it's like we
Yeah.
have a role to play in it, but actually, I think one thing that we got united on, and we did maybe like 8 months into our working relationship, we sat down and built a vision board for the first 10 years of what we want to do. And all my businesses prior to that, it had been a long time since I'd done a vision board. That was 5+ years. So there's a lot we want to do, but like really being rooted in the values of patience, you know, having quality reflection around who you're working with, why you're working with them. I think there's so much we could tell you, but it comes down to that patience. And there's things we would like to do, but it's just, again, do we partner with that person, and then that unlocks that roadmap. So would you say anything different?
No, I agree. I think it's really values-led what we're doing now. And also, I think we were just looking at businesses that are super purposeful. We went to something and they were talking about Kickstarter and all of those things that are purposeful, creative. I think, like you were saying, in this age of AI and efficiencies, you know, well-being for humans is a really important narrative. And it's something that will show if a business is going to, you know, sustain itself in the test of time, because you have happy people, you have people wanting to work in your industry every single day. So I think we're really working in those spaces a lot more now.
Have you ever partnered with an AI company, and have you ever integrated AI in your experiences? Is it a hard no for you? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, because I guess as well, in this age of AI, food like art and food is still gonna have such a stronghold, and people are gonna feel so emotional towards it and be so connected to it. So I guess you're able to really push that ship and be that person to do that as well.
And it can elevate it without overpowering it. I think there's potential in that.
Yeah, definitely. I think whenever any new technology is coming, you know, along and it's dominating industries, it's really important to be on board in a certain way and understand it and understand how it can be integrated into your business. I think when it comes to things like efficiencies and when we're talking about potentially AI tech in sort of like agritech, that to us is very, very interesting, and the possibilities of what that means, especially if it creates food sovereignty.
Sorry, what's agritech?
So like agricultural technology, things that are helping with sort of like irrigation and in like, you know, watering systems in places that are quite deserted, or helping, you know, helping sustain the land like regeneratively. There are certain technologies that are like, you know, becoming more and more integrated into, you know, natural farming systems that are really, really helping. So it's just looking at how we would introduce AI, just because there's lots of things to weigh up when it comes to using AI, because it's also like how is it produced rather than what it necessarily does for us.
And then I think on the other side, in terms of like what's happening in the now for us, it's just enabling us to do small but mighty things really fast and more consistently. So in previous businesses, what it would have cost me to build a website, to, you know, edit a shoot, to research venues, it would have cost so much manpower, labor power, and resources. So now we're utilizing AI throughout our Shopify. You know, the AI on there is quite good. Recently did a talk at Canva, and we're working on a team there and implementing the Canva AI 2.0 on our decks, on our designs, you know, how we touch up our photos, and when we look thinking about conference halls and venues, rather than spending 5 hours, I'm now able within 10 minutes to find out names of people who work there, figure out, okay, am I going to gift them? Am I going to email them? Am I going to invite them to the experience? So it's really enabling across our marketing, our technology, even our financials. So how we project manage, we were with Monday.com for a while. Now we're playing a lot with Trello.
Yeah.
We're playing with Trello. We had Notion at one point. So it's just enabling us to be...
Difficult. Notion's a bit difficult.
Yeah, but
much going on.
Product review.
But then there's also Pipedrive, you know, so again, when you're looking at sales.
That I haven't heard of.
So it's just a sales CRM. It's an alternative to HubSpot and Salesforce. So, you know, none of these people were sponsored by, but it's just, again, it's just that freedom to be like, okay, our delivery teams need an update. Okay, if we're going to use WhatsApp, how are we tracking the expenses and how's it going into Xero or QuickBooks? and being plugged into stuff. Okay, we met these 50 people at events the last 2 weeks. Where are we tracking and keeping them? Right, we can put it on a sales cycle, but some people you're not selling to, some people need to go on an email list. So I think AI just enables you to have all of that done as if you've got an assistant and a manager and a creative director with you. So I'm really big on telling people that it's a tool that should be your best friend rather than replacing jobs.
We had a founder on who said the exact same thing. And I read this really interesting quote that said something along the lines of AI should be a tool that allows creatives to be creatives and that automates what isn't creative. So it should be more, because, lots of creatives are scared that it's going to actually eat up that side of their job. But ultimately, if you use it well, it can actually allow you to be more creative. I think that's a really good way of seeing it. But if we think about financials, tell us more about your financial journey with the business. So how did you fund it initially? How's it going now?
So I think the story definitely is the first 2 years before I joined Seeds of Wild, self-employed business, Kiki building it. She was consulting for different brands, different restaurants, and just picking up that business. And then since I came in, we were just like, right, how do we turbo boost this to another level? And we spent quite a lot of time thinking about what we could build tech-wise, because people want subscriptions to the meals that we make. The amount of people that have asked us if we can make their meal plan, it's ridiculous. And then there's people who want access to the network that we have, so the nutritionists, the ambassadors, the people who have venues. So we found a couple of problems, and we spent quite a lot of time. We even trademarked the name. We came up with a hybrid new model, but we just said to ourselves, we've got to keep it simple and focus on the demand. And I think there was like a really big talk we went to in January 2025 by a guy ex-PayPal that was quite pivotal for me. And there was others that have been quite pivotal, but this one in particular, a guy called Matt Lerner, talks a lot about growth levers. And you can spend all this time trying to because everyone's raising money or everyone has got this big idea and be like, right, just going away from the main thing. But you need to think about the 20% of things that really impact 80% of your revenue. And prior to that, we probably were spreading ourselves on 3 or 4 pots, to my doing, more than Kiki's, because this food thing and this concept around community and brands could be taken to another level. But when we were listening to Matt, and the growth lever point he made was just have an experimental mindset, really figure out what is your North Star and what is the thing that's going to drive your business. And our North Star last year was mainly repeat custom. Yeah. Because we've got customers who love us and come back to us. We've got customers who introduce us to other customers that spend £10,000 with us. So that should be the focus, providing a world-class service and doubling down on that. So
and it seems like you have a range of customers as well.
Yeah,
so how can you address each different one?
By having a clear menu, knowing what you do and don't do. So people have come to us and said, can you do meal prep? We say, we don't do that. We can activate for your client event. We can do a baby shower. We can do your wedding. But we don't do drop-offs for 2 people. We have a minimum order, £300, and then our delivery team will go out to you. So becoming more clear on what you do and don't do has really been a big part for us.
Yeah, and I think it's also that whole knowing what the people who are coming to you actually need. And so whilst it's not been completely customizable for certain items, there are conversations. We're having more of a conversation. It's not just we're a service that you call when you need this and that. Some of our clients could be that. But actually, the bigger clients, the people that we've kept for a long time, who have been really consistent, we know them, and we take our time to get to know them, what they need, what their space is like, who their clients are that they're entertaining for, and how we can bring value and how we can add value. And every single time we do work with people like that, it's oh yeah, I'm definitely thinking of you. And the whole word of mouth thing, we have all these marketing strategies and things, and they're all fantastic and they work really well. However, we've got a community around our clients, which is amazing, and they will recommend us always.
So how going all the way back, what do you think the seeds were that built this initial community?
Oh, you've been holding on to that one.
I've been thinking about it.
Dying to say that.
I've been thinking about it.
Love that. It was values. It was always values-led, and it was people first. So, I am a person, and I'm leading with that. So I know that I'm talking to people. Yes, this is a job, and it's really important to have all of those boundaries in place. But it was what do you actually need? What would you actually like? What would work better for you? What is your budget? So in the beginning, I was a lot more malleable because it was just me and, people that I would hire here and there. But even now, we're still asking those questions. If somebody comes to us and they're like, we've got a brand launch and we're launching this. And I'm like, we'll go away and do the research. Oh, I see that you did this and this. Also that these are your brand values. These are like really important things for you. These are people who've been associated with you. These are things you like maybe personally on the team. And then we go from there in creating. So it's always been like as personable as possible because we are a human-first business.
How do you two complement each other? So what's your area of expertise, and BJ, what's yours?
Let's take the cooking off the table.
Yeah, obviously.
I have opinions, but I think, look, so the seed that was planted, like what you said, just so I can add on it. So I come from a background of being a serial entrepreneur. I've had businesses in retail, in education, in marketing, and I've invested in businesses as well. So given this 15-year career, all I've known is business and community and building, that's a superpower I bring to the table. There's not really a place we go conference-wise and there isn't someone I know or someone that knows me, especially in London. So we've just been utilising that as one of our superpowers. So partnerships is probably one of my strengths in the team. Definitely. I've had to retrain as a bit of a technologist, so taking up the mantle of building stuff. So yeah, if anyone has any feedback on our Seeds website, just ping it to me for that. And I think for Keeks, really taking on the creative mantle of being our creative director, culinary design, and then also relationship management with our talent. So I'm really good at finding people because I'm working on a lot on our partnerships. It makes sense to go, let Kiki go improve and actually keep the standard of the ethos and whereas there's been businesses where I've been that she is. So again, I think it's quite clear that we're able to both have relationships with people, but I focus on venues, clients. So I'm personally really working with the delivery team, going and doing drop-offs, whereas she'll work with the delivery team doing the activation. And it works well. And we've been building a bit of a board behind us of advisors. And that's been quite useful because there's a lot that happens in this type of industry. You're spending time not just sourcing the food, not just making the food, but thinking about your positioning, thinking about contracts, trademark. You're looking to acquire things. So we've now found a nutritional advisor, a legal advisor, a financial advisor, and there's a couple other people jumping in and out. But yeah, this summer we'll probably announce who our board is. I think that's also part of the journey. But there's a lot. Success takes a lot.
Yeah, I think it's whatever we're not strong at, it's really amazing to have that team of people around you who are okay, I can fill this part in. This is where I'm really strong at. I'm really strong with numbers. I'm really strong with, whatever, the other parts of it. I think I'm definitely the creative, but you are also very creative. But I definitely love to take lead of that. I think I can get lost in it occasionally. So he'll have to be no, this is not in the budget. But then, I think the creative side, the sustainability side, the partnerships, maintaining those relationships with people in and around our sort of orbit is really important. And that's something I really love to do.
I think, again, for the audience, I think what younger people struggle with as they go throughout their career is figuring out what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. So what did that look like for both of you in figuring out what really worked for you and what didn't work for you and where you needed to get somebody else in to, help you?
Yeah, for me, it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of tears following my, my numbers and my tax returns and things like that. It was just all, and I knew a couple of people who were also self-employed or small business owners, and it was I just have an accountant. I'm like, oh my God, of course, obviously. But when you're in the moment, you're not thinking about it like that when you first start. I definitely wasn't.
There's no way you could know, right? Unless well, I guess for some people it's more instinctive, right?
Yeah.
And you pick it up,
Exactly.
You listen about, but if it's not instinctive to you, then it's something you do have to cry about and mess up before you can do it well, you know?
And I think if you're a creative as well, that is a lot of creative people are generally not as great at like numbers and things like that. So I think structurally, all of those kind of things, strategy, you know, things that I may not have thought about at the beginning, now I've definitely grown better at that, but it was a lot of trial and error. But I think the best way that I could have done it is just collectivity, like networking with people across the board who have different skills, who you could possibly connect with. You know, if you've got somebody who's into finance and you're into creativity, like how do you work together? How could you do something cool together? How could you benefit each other's businesses, especially if you're working in lots of entities full of self-employed, you know, independent creative people or independent people. How can you network across? I think that's one of the biggest things I've got from like working with you, especially. Yeah.
And what would you say to someone who's too fearful of the instability? Would you say this isn't the right thing for you then?
No, I think, again, there's just too many examples of people killing it.
Yeah, but also like
Make a vision board.
the idea of stability, I think, is a fallacy anyway.
Agreed.
I think
That's
the
a good
idea,
point.
like you could just get made redundant from any job.
Yeah.
So,
Couldn't agree anymore.
and I'm like, would you rather stay in the misery every day or just make it a controlled experiment is what we would say. I think it's just like give it 6 months, give it 3 months, make, you know, a little
Build your
plan,
buffer up.
like build a little plan, you know, and then just try it for a little while and see how you go. Because like the stability thing, I think we all were made to believe this idea that, you know, I definitely was when it was like, go to university, get a degree, then you can get a good job, and only then can you get a good job. And I'm like looking at it afterwards thinking lots of people have a really great job and earn great salaries
But no joy.
and they
They're
don't
really miserable.
yeah, they're not very
But
happy.
you have to figure out
So what does that
what's
mean?
important.
Yeah, and I think to young people, it's also your first thing might not be your only thing that you're successful at. But when we start, it's like, this is the thing that has to be successful. And you're not looking at, I definitely wasn't looking at people who had like Richard Branson or whatever, who had like 10, 30 to 30 businesses or whatever. And I'm like, what was the first thing he did? And it's like, well, it wasn't sell, it wasn't have an airline or, there were lots of things leading up to that. And it might not have had anything to do with anything. And I think we forget that a little bit because, like you said, the spotlight goes on this amazing thing that they've done. But they, lots of people and some of the wealthiest people have had many, many iterations of what they were great at or what they were known for. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. And I think that also speaks to just experience and just keep on going at it and just trusting that. I think trust is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And you seem to have that real trust through
And
looking at all those YouTube videos and knowing that this truly is something if you just keep on going at it will come through.
It's like working out,
Yeah,
whether you're a
building
runner,
muscle.
you lift weights, you start building that momentum.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that probably we need to say, so curiosity, trust, making the plan, but vision.
I'm very interested in the why, because something that I've definitely experienced is why is this the right thing for me, and how can I figure out that this is the right thing for me? And I guess that just comes with time and doing those experiments and, as you were saying, knowing your game. I think for me that's been the most thing that stuck with me the most in this conversation is knowing your game, figuring out your game, and figuring out if you even want to play in that game in the first place, and not get distracted by those shiny things.
And it's okay, you might come back to that game.
You might come back to it, exactly. But knowing that it's fine if you leave it and come back to it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a failure.
I think the why is the most important. That is the question you have to ask. And for us, I think it's really purposeful. It's like, because we're building the future that we actually want to live in, and we're, helping really to shape a system that we are in a lot. We're in this food system loads. We want to help shape it to make it better and to help more people understand it a little bit more and participate in a way that's great for the planet and for everyone. So I think our why is so, so strong. And I think whatever the iterations of how we do that, me personally, for sure, in how I do that.
The modality we're using in food is such a great way to bring healing to the
True.
world.
Absolutely.
So my big why is to save others from, the grief they're feeling and help others around society with like what they can do to improve their life. It starts with the gut. And I always vouch for the creations that Kiki's made. My dad was a chef for 30 years, and food is like one of those things that just really brings people together, family style. We will be on tour this summer doing lots of activations, so please sign up to our newsletter, find us on socials, we'll be doing drops, and hopefully 2 of you can come and experience the banging food soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
love
Absolutely
to.
love to. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having us.